and putting it into the wind.
Charles Chevelle.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, I was one of the members in the House who throughout supported retaining the purchase age at 18. I believe that I reached that position on the basis of the evidence that I heard in the Select Committee in the previous Parliament. As I said in my earlier contribution, the experts who came independently to the committee, who were not from the industry, identified a number of factors where if we tightened regulation, we could make a difference to our binge drinking culture. And it is true that age was one of those, but it was never the most significant or the most important. As my colleague Leanne Dalzell said, the issues of availability, of advertising and of pricing were seen as much more significant influences. And I just want to make a brief call in this part of the debate to say this. We should base our decisions on the evidence. We shouldn't fear reviews. I think this is an appropriate supplementary order paper because we should always be looking at the evidence and whether or not, as the member who's just resumed her seat has said, best practice, international research, the experts tell us that there are new factors that we should be considering. We should always be keeping an open mind on this issue. So what I just want to say is this. Since I first became a member of this House, I've served on and off on the Justice and Electoral Committee, and that's been a rewarding experience. But we have a tendency in this place to assume that certain matters ought to go to that committee as a matter of course. And I, in supporting this supplementary order paper, and I hope it will pass, would make this plea to the House. If it does pass, let's think about some standing orders around, or some sessional orders around how this review should work. Why should it go to the Justice and Electoral Committee? This is a health issue, just as all of our regulation of hazardous substances, potentially hazardous substances like alcohol, ought to be, just as drug law reform ought to be, just as prostitution law reform ought to be, just as abortion and the issues surrounding that issue ought to be. These things shouldn't be considered always in a justice framework. That's with respect, an old-fashioned way of thinking about these issues. If we are thinking about these matters going forward, we should be considering them in a health paradigm. It's health that matters when it comes to these issues. We should be sending it off to that committee, sir, not to Justice and Electoral, not to one of the law reform related committees, because historically that's where these sort of things went. The best place for these sorts of things to be considered by our Parliament is the Health Committee, and I would just want to end my contribution on this subpart, sir, with a plea that when we deal with these sort of issues in future, we send them to the right committee.
Members, we come... point of order, Kevin Hay.
Mr Chair, I do intend to seek a call on this debate, but